Hey guys, how's it going? We are live. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so it'll be nice reconnecting with all of you and also enjoying a cigar, which it's also been a while since I've had one of these. There's something about BC. It was like rainy all the time, so I never felt like really smoking a cigar, and you weren't even allowed to smoke on trial grounds anyways, so um, it's been a while since I got to sit back and enjoy one of these, and the weather's beautiful out. So I hope you guys are all having a good night. And I'm going to kind of recap a little bit about, how the trial went. I'm sure you guys have probably all watched my YouTube series on the trial, so you guys kind of do know how it went, anyways. Um, but we can talk a little bit about it, and then we can maybe get into some questions and comments and, just general dog training conversation and kind of see where everybody's at. So, Donovan Anderson says, "Hey, I have your puppy to adult bundle, but I am not on Facebook. Do I have to be on Facebook and in the group in order to ask you questions?" No, yes, you must be, Donovan. You have to ask questions in the group. If you want to ask questions, you must be on there. Cassandra says, "I came to BC from Alberta to watch you guys. I'm the one with the big Mastiff dog. Was so fun to see IGP in person. I even got a shepherd." Well, good for you. I'm glad that you're coming over to the bright side. Leopard Star says, "Donovan, there are a few options." Oh, okay, that's you're answering questions. Um, what else we got here? Don't forget to like the video from my good friend Chandra. And she's very much right. Please like the video. It's always good to like the video. Costs you absolutely nothing. Jason Andrews has with my 7-month-old sport dog. I am currently working on healing in my PSA club. Today I bought your sport course. Should I work through your healing or secret sauce portion first or both at once? That's a good question, Jason. My advice, watch the secret sauce. You don't have to get through it all at once. Watch the secret sauce, then jump over to the healing. You bought my sport course. So if you bought the sport bundle, you also have access to my new course, the Active Power Seminar, where I'm coaching people just like you that have young sport dogs and they're learning how to bring power into that healing. So, by all means, jump in there and watch that too. How's it going, Chandra? Hey, guys, I see all of you jumping in here. Canine German Shepherd says, you will always be the best in the world to us. Well, that's very sweet of you. But as of now, I'm not the best in the world. We're working towards getting there, though. So, the interesting thing about my little journey with IGP is I kind of really started filming. Like, I've always filmed training videos and, little snippets of, like, what I'm doing with my personal dogs. But I think I really started I seriously started filming trials this year because obviously I seriously started doing trials this year. I have some trial video from earlier, but I don't think I really got after it until this year. So I filmed Quebec regionals, obviously double podium at Quebec regionals. Then I filmed the Canadian Working Dog Championship. I actually had my videographer come for that, and I had a 2-part series on that. And again, a podium. So it was cool that you guys got to watch. Like with the videos that I filmed, I actually ended up podiuming at 2 of these competitions. And so you guys got to see me, take the podium basically and how I handled that and how I got to that. But in this competition, this nationals, the German Shepherd nationals that just occurred in British Columbia, you guys saw me not accomplish the podium. And that's actually very significant. Because if you do the sport in a real way, as in you take a dog and you train that dog. That dog either has no training because you raised it from a puppy, or maybe you get a young adult dog that's got some work in it, or maybe not. And you train and trial that dog. You start taking that dog all the way from the IGP1, IGP2, IGP3. You trial that dog. You go through a regional. You go to a national. The majority of the time, especially in the beginning, you are going to fail, right? The majority of the time you are going to fail. You're going to have more failures than successes. So basically, at the beginning of this season, when I started filming, you guys were seeing a lot of success. And what you guys are seeing now with what happened the last national that I competed in, you saw failure, right? We didn't technically fail in that my dogs all passed the IGP-3, but you saw failure in that I did not accomplish my goal of being on the podium with both dogs. I didn't even accomplish my secondary goal of being in the top 5. So you guys have watched me win, but now what you're going to do is you get to watch me lose. And that's significant because how you take a loss is actually more important than how you take a win, especially if you want to be successful in dog sport, right? Because you're going to lose a lot more than you win. So how you handle that loss, how you handle that failure is more important than how you handle the success. And I'll tell you why. What success does is it reinforces the behavior that you engaged in leading up to that success, right? Dog training 101, right? Behavior that, receives that. When behavior is reinforced, you're more likely to re-engage in that behavior over and over again. But when there's a failure, now you're less likely, if you're smart, to re-engage in exactly the same behavior that led up to that failure. Now, this is what separates, I think, handlers that are ultimately going to be successful, ultimately going to be successful in terms of dog sport versus handlers that are not. I see a lot of people, they've been in dog sport 20, 30 years. And they're doing the same thing that they've been doing for 20, 30 years. And they haven't had any kind of meaningful success, right? Because they haven't changed anything. Every time they fail, it's because, I don't have the right dog, or, this happened, or that happened, or the judge screwed me, or there's always a reason why they failed, but the reason is never looking back at them in the mirror, right? It is very important when you fail that you take complete accountability. Yes, there are things outside of your control that may have influenced your failure, but 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of things that were in your control that also played a role in your failure. And that's the fantastic thing about dog sport. I don't care what level of handler you are. I don't know of any handler that goes out there and wins every time, including the world champions, right? They don't win every time. They don't even win most of the time. In many cases, that they actually fail or they don't win. They're not at the top, right? But what they do, the really successful people in dog sports, they keep coming back. They keep coming back. They recalibrate, they come back. They recalibrate, they come back. They recalibrate, they come back. And this is a microcosm of dog training in general. If something you're doing is not yielding the result that you like or that you think is good, you either can blame the dog, you can blame the weather, you can blame somebody else, or you can blame yourself. And I'm going to tell you, only one of those things is going to be particularly productive. So, what I've done is I've looked at everything I did leading up to that national, right? I've looked at the results. Ironically, both my dogs got the exact same points, right? Both my dogs got 263, but they did differently in the 3 phases of IGP. So, for instance, Chico got 76 in obedience, which, by the way, is an atrocious score. And then 92 in tracking and 95 in protection. Those are good scores, right? Gage, conversely, got 91 in obedience, 90 in tracking, and then 82 in protection, which is a terrible score for protection, right? So they both dropped a phase, but they dropped very different phases. So what does that tell me? Well, that tells me that I don't really have a training problem per se. What I have is a trial prep problem. The way that I prepped both those dogs, right, wasn't quite right for those dogs for that specific circumstance. Now, as you guys may or may not know, there are a lot of different ways to trial prep a dog. And in case you guys don't know, Chico and Gage are very different types of dogs. So what they would need from a trial prepping perspective, how I would peak them for a trial, is very different. There are also some things that are inescapable. I got 90 and 92 in tracking, right? For me, it's not good enough. Yeah, those are good scores, but really, I would like to be at the 95 plus level in tracking. And I have scored in the low 90s consistently in tracking over my last 3, 4 trials. So now it's time. It's time to recalibrate the tracking. Luckily, I have a good friend by the name of Ann Lee that's helping me with that, right? Because he's consistently getting mid to high 90s, right? There's a few more points for me to be gained there. So I'm recalibrating that tracking. Again, blaming myself, right? Yeah, we dropped, the dogs maybe made a mistake here or there or whatever else, but at the end of the day, we can get more out of tracking. So I'm recalibrating. I'm seeking help from somebody that I trust to give me that help because they have that consistent proven success at that level. And I like what he's putting out, right? So my buddy Ann Lee's helping me with the tracking. And I think I'm going to get a V in tracking, which is a 95 plus in the next trial. The other thing too, like I said, we got to look at how we're trial prepping. We got to change it up a little bit. I did some things with Chico that worked really well. I did some things with Gage that worked really well. And obviously also some things did not work well. They actually had catastrophic results. So we're going to recalibrate and we're going to make sure that those things don't happen again. And then the great thing is I get to try again in approximately 25 days because I'm going to Croatia with Gage. And I'm going to be competing at the world level with Gage, which is an even bigger trial than what I was just in. Instead of looking at it as, oh, woe is me, we didn't get the result we wanted, I'm looking at it as, well, this happened. It's unfortunate, but now maybe this happens so that I can do better at the world level, right? And the world level really is a much more important trial than, Canadian Nationals. Like Croatia, FCI Worlds is a significantly more important trial than Canadian Nationals. So maybe what happened at Canadian Nationals is going to prevent me, is going to actually improve my performance at Croatia, in Croatia, because I'm going to learn from what happened at Canadian Nationals, right? I'm going to try some different things. Maybe they're going to work, maybe they're not. But either way, I'm always trying to learn and recalibrate and move forward. And I think, in my opinion, that's the best way to lose. When you lose, take it as a learning experience. Think about what you need to change in order to maximize your performance and move forward. Bill, I can see you're mentally ill. I'm just going to quickly block you here. We try not to allow the mentally ill here. Not that I don't have pity for the mentally ill. It's just not appropriate that you're on a dog training channel. So there you go. Bye, Bill. All right. Anyways, let me get to some of your questions, and maybe we'll go on with that. Let's see here. Miss Clark has super proud to say that Ruby and I did our first obedience trial this week, and she blew it out of the water. Everyone commented on how much power she brought to the work, all thanks to you. Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you and your dog are doing well. That's one thing. That's one thing that I've always really valued in training, right? I always want a dog to give me their heart and soul in obedience. I'm really happy with Gage's obedience at nationals. It was actually the high score, even though he didn't get high obedience, because one other handler got the exact same points as me. Lance Collins, the Canadian champion, got 91 in obedience, and I got 91 with Gage. But at the end of the day, if there's two of you with the same score, the one with the highest protection is considered high obedience. So, but it was 91 was the high obedience score. So we did, consistently we've been doing low 90s, which I think for Gage is at his peak in obedience. I'm very happy with that, and that's because he gives me everything. He gives me his heart and his soul in obedience, and I'm very grateful for that. I really do love that, and training dogs to work like that is a truly, I don't know how to train any other way, to be honest with you. I love it. I love it. Danny says, hello from Pennsylvania. I watch all of your videos. I have your book, No Nonsense Dog Training. It's been great. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that, and thank you. Khalid says, we moved to Kentucky, USA, and we miss your training. Well, good luck down in Kentucky. Shayna McDonald says, I did film your practice at Nationals in BC. If you want, I can send it to you. No, well, you know what, Shayna? I was technically not allowed to film practice. That was a strict rule from the German Shepherd, the German Shepherd Club of Canada. And as I was at their event, I'm going to follow their rules, right? I don't agree that you shouldn't film the practice, but that's the rules. So I didn't film. I appreciate that you filmed it, but I'm not going to be availing myself of that footage. The rules are the rules, and I follow the rules when I'm a guest somewhere. Roman Alex says, hey, man, congrats on what you're doing, promoting the best dog sport in the world. Consistency is key. Well done. Consistency is the thing with IGP. You got 3 phases. Here's the other thing. What is success, right? I defined what my success would be for nationals. Like, a lot of people are like, well, it's great that you showed up. You showed 2 dogs, and they both accomplished an IGP 3, and both of them had 2 really strong phases, even though you dropped a phase. Even though both dogs did drop a phase, you had 2 really strong phases with each dog. And listen, I'm appreciative that I got to show, both dogs in a strong way in some phases. But at the end of the day, IGP is a 3-phase sport, and if you're not consistent across 3 phases, it's not a success from my perspective. Now, for other handlers, maybe showing up and getting to the finish line is considered a success, and that's completely fine. Everybody should define success in a way that is meaningful for them. So, for instance, right, my success for what I consider to be a success at Canadian Nationals would have been a top 5 placement or a podium placement. So podium preferably, and then top 5 secondary. I didn't accomplish either of those goals, so I don't consider it to be a success. I do consider it to be a learning experience. For the FCI Worlds, right? What is a success for me? Do I think realistically that my dog Gage will win FCI Worlds? No, I'm not under that impression, because I'm very well aware of what kind of dog he is and what genetic gifts he has and what genetic gifts he doesn't have. Gage isn't as much dog as many of the dogs that are going to be at that competition, but he's an active dog. I think he's generally quite a well-trained dog, and he's a dog that when he's at his best, he gives me his heart and soul. So for me, the goal with Gage and what I would consider to be a success would be a combined score of 270 points at the FCI Worlds in Croatia. If I get a combined score of 275 points, which is basically 90, 90, 90, right, or some approximation thereof, and I'm able to do that at the world level, I would be an extremely happy man, and I would be very happy with my performance and with my dog. And that's what I'm defining as success for the FCI Worlds, right? Now, whether I accomplish that or not, we'll see. It's my first FCI Worlds, but that's the goal that I'm setting for myself. Phalanx Canine Dog Training says, hey, I'm not a sport dog trainer, but I train in a dog's natural instinct to protect the handler. Would you agree that the drives are different than sport work versus real protection work? No, they're not different. There's no very few dogs have a natural instinct to protect the handler per se. What a lot of people perceive as a dog's natural instinct to protect the handler is simply the dog reacting to very obvious threat signals by a decoy. Whenever I hear real protection work versus sport protection work, 9 times out of 10, no offense to you, it's shit work, which is kind of like pseudo sport work. And people are like, oh, this is real work. No, the drives are very simple. You've got prey, you've got defense, right? You've got social aggression. Those are generally the 3 drives that you're working within, right? If a dog is pursuing and biting something, he's in prey. I don't care if you want to call it some other fancy name. He's in prey in order to pursue and to bite something. If a dog is reacting to something because he perceives a threat from that thing, right? He's in defense, right? If a dog is, engaging in aggression because he perceives something is challenging his control over a resource, whether that resource is his, human affection, space, whatever else, food, then he's engaging in social aggression. Those 3 drives are what motivate dogs to do what they do. And depending on how the dog expresses those drives will depend on how they work. So, no. I don't agree with you. Sorry. Stephen Hickey says, do you know Garrett Wing? No, I do not. I believe he's another YouTube personality. Neffy Diaz says, I breed working line German Shepherds. Well, congratulations. Better Built Dog says, do you plan to get bang her BH soon? Maybe. I don't know. I haven't really made a plan for it. Oh, no. She's dead. Sarah Equestrian says, hey, I'm sad. Can you say hello to me, please? Well, hello, Sarah. Please don't be sad. What else do we got here? So Mr. Haynes says, what do you mean on the video that if you do too many trials, they become trial savvy? Well, that's a very good question. Let's get into that. Well, before we get into that, let me see if I can get this cigar going again. Okay. So there's this perception I hear all the time. Handlers will say, well, you know, I'm just glad to show up here and give my dog this experience, this trial experience. Like, I don't expect to be successful. My dog's not very well trained right now, but I'm just showing up to give my dog this trial experience. And I think this experience is good because my dog is young, or yada, yada, yada. They've never been to a national. They've never seen this picture. So I'm just here to show it to them. And I've always strongly disagreed with that idea. I mean, if that's what you believe, that's what you believe. But I don't believe that at all. And here's why. The trial is the only time you lie to your dog. Think about it. In training, whether there's obedience, whether we're talking tracking, whether we're talking protection, there is always reward and there's always correction, right? There's always some level of reward and correction involved in the training of obedience, tracking, and protection, okay? In the trial, there is no correction. You're not allowed to correct your dog. It is illegal, and you'll be disqualified immediately if you do it. There is no reward. So in obedience, you're not rewarding your dog. You're not giving your dog a ball, food. You can praise your dog, so you could say that maybe you're giving your dog some lower level of reward, because I don't consider praise to be a significant level of reward or incentive for those behaviors that we're asking. So you can say maybe there's a little bit. In protection, there is a reward in that the dog gets to bite. However, that reward is balanced against your ability to control the dog's access to that reward. So the second the dog realizes, hey, you actually can't make me do anything here. You can't actually correct me. So there's no reason why I shouldn't just go and bite this guy. Why should I do all that healing with you? Why should I lie down and wait for a command to attack the guy? Why don't I just go bite him right now? There's nothing stopping me from doing it, right? So that the reward is actually almost counterproductive. It's counterbalanced against your ability to control the dog's impulses and to direct the dog in the way that the trial calls for. So really, there is no correction or reward in the trial, whereas in training, there's all of those things present, right? Now, the problem with dogs when they become trial-wise, we call them trial-wise. The dog knows it's a trial. The dog has put two and two together. This isn't training anymore. Is when the dog realizes there's no consequence for not doing what they're supposed to do, the dog is going to engage more in self-satisfying behaviors in general. The majority of dogs will do that, right? If the dog realizes there's no reward, there's no possibility for reward, in many cases, the dog may not perform a behavior to the best of their ability, or they may not even actually perform the behavior whatsoever, right? And that's the challenge of trialing. And that's why it's something that you should look at as having a limited shelf life. It's not something you should engage in a lot. Now, of course, there are certain types of dogs that do better with a lot of trialing versus others. Like there are some types of dogs that they're going to give you 110%, and they're going to work a certain way every single time, no matter what. That's their personality. They're very much, they're maybe a bit more of a biddable type of dog. They're a dog that maybe finds a lot of joy in every aspect of the work, and they're always going to kind of work the same way all the time. And then there's some dogs that have varying levels of independence. There's some dogs that are super independent, and they're always going to look out for number one first. And the second they realize that they don't have to do X, Y, and Z, and they can do it the way they want to do it, then they're going to happily do it the way they want to do it, right? And then there's dogs that are kind of on the spectrum in between those two things. And that's the thing with dog sport is we all have different types of dogs, and they have different predispositions. And depending on those predispositions, and also depending on the foundation of the dog, it will dictate the performance of the dog, especially if the dog becomes trial wise. So, for instance, if Gage is trial wise in obedience, he might get a little sloppy, but generally speaking, he's still going to give me 110% in obedience. The only time I really have started to see a problem is when I do the send out and the down off the send out, he's becoming real slow to down off the send out. That's something I got to fix, right? In protection, we saw what happened when he realized it was a trial. He kind of half-assed did it. He didn't do it to the best of his ability because, quite frankly, it wasn't, he just wasn't incentivized to do it that way, right? And there are several different ways that we can fix it. Versus there are some dogs, they'll just do it the same way every single time, right? So you have to know what kind of dog you're dealing with. You also have to understand the foundation of your dog, because a lot of the time the foundation will dictate how the dog performs. Like I saw Chico in the trial in obedience. He, for whatever reason, realized it was a trial right away, right? He immediately kind of reverted to his foundation. Sloppy, kind of like, the obedience was there, but it wasn't like, wow. It wasn't what he was capable of. It wasn't full power and control the way he's able to do it. It was kind of sloppy and he was motivated, but not particularly motivated, right? So that's one thing that you have to understand with trialing is the more you trial, the more the dog's going to put together the fact that something is a trial versus something is not, right? And dogs are smart. They figure out context really, really quickly. So ideally, the ideal thing is that your dog does not know the difference between trial and training. Hey, Demin Liang says, has no intention to be picky, but are your dogs both running towards the fence instead of straight in the trial? If so, is it related to you always planting the toy in your facility at the end of the fence? Uh, so actually, Chico ran straight. He could have run faster, but he did run straight. Gage shot off to the right and then kind of button hooked back down the middle. The reason why so Gage is actually in the last couple of trials, when he doesn't see a target to go to, he does tend to kind of diagonal off to the right on the send out. That's something I'm working to fix. Unfortunately for that trial, because the field was so small, it was a very small field, and there was banners all along the end of the field. So he basically just picked the banner that was kind of more to the right and shot off towards it. But then he did button hook straight. That actually didn't cost me any points because he was fast and basically from the judge's view. The judge views the send out from the side. They don't view it from the back, right? So that slight button hook is very visible when you're filming behind the dog. It is not visible when you're watching the dog from a side angle. So other than getting pointed for the slow down on the send out, there really was no point loss there. But, I always put the toy at the very end of the field up against the wall or the fence or the bush or whatever's at the very end of the field, and it's always right down the middle. Gage just always kind of defaults off to the right. And Chico just, again, I don't think just enough experience, enough training, which is why he was a little bit slower than he should have been, but he did go, so. Maria says, what are some of the dogs that you liked at the trial? I liked Lance Collins' dog. I actually have a puppy off of Lance Collins' dog. I think it's a very good dog. I like my friend Ann Lee's dog. Without sounding too cocky, I will say this. In my opinion, Chico is the strongest male that was shown at that region, at that national. I don't think there's another male that has more drive and more dominance, more power than Chico. Also, Chico's a V-rated dog. Well, that's a funny story. So at the end of the trial, I entered the dog show, right? And so I entered the dog show, and Chico's 5.5 years old, so he's never been shown. So I go and enter the dog show, and Chico gets rated V, right? So he gets rated V by the judge, which is like the highest level of like it basically means he's structurally as close to perfect as you can be, right? But then I got downgraded to SG because apparently when a dog is over 3 years of age, he has to have a breed survey in order to have a V rating. And because he didn't have a breed survey, which is kind of funny because the breed survey is pretty much the same as the show, right? Like you have to do some bite work and then you go and do the dog show, but whatever else, doesn't matter. So technically he got an SG rating, but really he's a V rated dog. So in my opinion, Chico was, I think, the strongest, most dominant male to be shown at the Canadian Nationals. And I've actually had a lot of interest from people reaching out to me to breed him. So, yeah. Stephen Harrison asked me, are you going to trial a female anytime soon? Most likely. Let me just remove some of these people here. Let's see what else we got here. Craig Watler says, I just bought your book. Can't wait to get into it, but I will attempt the online courses as well, all the way down in New Orleans. Well, welcome, Craig, and I hope to see you getting after it. Tommy Karigianikis says, heart and soul dash nepopo. Yeah, that is a saying that they use, eh? But I don't think that they have the exclusive rights to that. I think anybody that trains dogs wants the dog to give them their heart and soul. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with my little phone stand here. Let's see here. Caravaggio says, are you interested in the history of dog work, the ancient history in particular? Yeah, I've read some of it. Very interesting. Dogs were used, obviously, in all sorts of roles. Particularly, I find the warlike roles that they were used in very interesting. We've been working with dogs for many thousands of years, especially from a more combative perspective. So, certainly very interesting to hear what people used to do. Guys, please don't ask me about other people's like methods and stuff like that. Unless it's somebody that I think is like really harmful, or I know them personally, and I'm gonna say they're fantastic. I don't really want to comment on other creators and what they do. Ty says, what training can start out sloppy and be polished later? Examples are crooked downs, heels at the start, etc. Yeah, you can fix just about anything as long as you know how to fix it properly. Justin says, hey, I've seen you at the GSSCC Nationals. Too bad you didn't get the result you wanted. I want to start the sport, but I'm not a fan of the club scene. Is there another way to train IGP without a club? Absolutely. There are private training groups that you can be a member of. I'm not a member of a club. There are private training groups you can be a member of. You can get private coaching if you've got the money for it. Online mentorship. There's a lot of ways that you can engage in IGP that don't involve joining a club. Ty says, how when to train functional and obedience together, apart, one after the other. How young does each start? Does sloppy functional obedience screw up competition obedience? Typically, with sport dogs, I'll train basic functional stuff like a place command, a recall. I'll have all the fundamentals just in a functional way. Like that's life. Functional obedience is everyday life. Um, but I'll be concurrently training the sports stuff. The sports stuff takes like, really training a dog properly through all the obedience of dog sport. It's like a year, year and a half to train, sometimes even 2 years, right? So it's not something that you can just say, I'm not doing any functional obedience until I do this. I generally train them concurrently. Functional obedience is very fast to train. Competition obedience is like I said, it takes years to shape and you're just always working on it. Invictus says, hello, Has, in the videos, were you serious about selling Chico? I was half serious, and here's the reason I would consider selling Chico. The reason I'll consider selling Chico is because the foundation is not my foundation, right? And when you have a foundation, anybody that's done anything in dog sport knows that foundation is forever, right? You can you can put some duct tape on the foundation. You can do a lot to kind of correct a foundation or make it a little bit like make it better, but the foundation does pop up, right? Especially when the dog is tired, when the dog is stressed, when the dog becomes trial wise, for instance. And that foundation can really kind of ruin your day if it's not the foundation that you would want it to be. And that's what we see with Chico in the obedience. I'm not particularly happy with that foundation, and it's going to be something that is a lot to overcome if I want to compete with him on the world level and have a good chance there. So for me, I'd be open to selling him, but he wouldn't be cheap. Hopefully that answers your question. Super Canine Dog Training says, also, do you worry about the e-collar conditioning is just simply habituation? Have you read Adaptive Behavior and Learning? I don't, no, I have not read Adaptive Behavior and Learning. Here's why I'm not worried about it, because I've been doing it for years and I know what the impact is. If it was just habituation, then we wouldn't see results from it. We wouldn't see dogs that work harder. We wouldn't see dogs that go faster. We wouldn't see dogs that are more correct. What you have to understand is e-collar conditioning is exactly what Nepo Po is. That's what Nepo Po is. There's an entire successful dog training system. I mean, Nepo Po is really commercialized, but Nepo Po is e-collar conditioning. It's the habituation. So habituation just implies that the dog's getting used to it and, it's not having any kind of impact on the dog that's positive. That's a stupid assumption to make, right? I don't care how used to pressure you get, it's going to impact your behavior somewhat, right? And when you use the e-collar properly, it accelerates behavior. It helps the dog. It makes the dog faster. It makes the dog better. And also it builds resilience in the dog and strength in the dog. I use a lot of like fundamental Nepo Po principles. I never went to a silver school or gold school. I learned from one of Bart Bellon's. I learned the Nepo Po from one of Bart Bellon's original students. I was privileged enough to go to a seminar with Yogi Zank, and a lot of what he taught at that seminar still sticks with me to this day. I don't do exactly all that stuff, but I took a lot of those principles and I incorporated them into what I do now, right? Things like opposition reflex, things like using low stim, all of that type of stuff. Now, there's another way to train that a lot of people do where they'll take, and this is in my opinion, it's probably a little bit, let's say, maybe not so popular. all dog trainers like different types of dogs, right? There's a lot of dog trainers, they like a more sensitive, biddable type of dog. Dog that has drive, a dog that has maybe like some good genetic qualities, but they're more sensitive, they're softer dogs, they're a little bit more biddable. Um, and, it doesn't take a lot to make a lot, if that makes sense. I personally like dogs that are a little bit more like me. I like dogs that are a little bit hard headed, have their own mind, maybe a little bit dominant. I like dogs like this. Now, um, those dogs that are a little bit more set, there's no two ways about it. Those dogs that are maybe a little bit more sensitive but still have like drive, they're a little bit soft to the handler. These types of dogs, you know, you can train in a very positive way with these dogs, and then bringing corrections that, in my opinion, aren't like for like what my dogs are, wouldn't be very much of a correction for them, but for those dogs, they're huge corrections, and you can bring them in very surgically and selectively in order to optimize performance and keep the dog straight in training. I don't train like that. I like bringing in pressure very early in my training and layering it into all the exercises and just building the dog's resilience and strength and speed and toughness, right? And I like training like that. I think it makes a lot of fire in the dog. It makes the dog, for lack of a better word, heart and soul, right? And it makes the dog better than what he actually is. Like Gage's obedience is case in point of that, right? Like the dog is showing a lot more than what maybe he genetically is, or he's showing himself at his very like highest level, right? So in my opinion, I'm not worried about habituation at all. I've been doing it for too long to be worried about it, right? That's just something, I think it's a little bit of a gimmick that, you know, some people started to use to try and like make it sound like their training was like super secret and super different, when in reality it's just a different kind of dog and it's a different kind of approach to training, and it really depends on how you train, right? Let's see what we got here. Harrison says, T-litter looks great in your recent IG post. I have a deposit on one of the males. Was the small one in the middle a female? No, the small one's a male. There was one that wasn't actually in the video that is also a male. He's small too, like that one, that little black one. He's not black, actually. He's bicolor, that one in the video. Puppies at that age, they all grow sometimes at different rates. Those little males are going to end up bigger than like their sisters, right? Like their sisters are the big ones in the litter right now. The biggest one in the litter is a big female, but she's not going to be the biggest at the end of the day. One of those little runty puppies is going to be probably the biggest puppy in the litter by the end of it. He'll probably be like 85 pounds or something like that, right? When you see puppies at 6 weeks, it doesn't really mean anything, like, they kind of grow at different rates, depends how much milk they got, so on and so forth. But they all end up kind of catching up to each other and achieving their full genetic growth, later on in life. So what you see now is certainly not going to be meaningful in terms of what they ultimately end up to, be. Jorge Gonzalez says, are the judges at the trial ex-professional trainers or competitors? No, you don't actually have to be an ex-competitor to be a judge. I think you do have to have a minimum of an IGP3, but you don't actually have to compete, or nor are you a professional trainer. The majority of people in IGP are not professional dog trainers at all. So no, to answer your question, no. Horst Dieter, which was the SV judge doing the protection and obedience, I don't know what his history is with dogs. I do think he's been accomplished. I think he's competed on the world level. And then the tracking judge, Darren Clark, I think he is tracked. I think he's titled a dog to an IGP3. As far as I know, he doesn't compete, nor has he competed. But I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me on that. Maria says, is there nerves involved in aggression like with defense? 100% there is. Chandra says, do the London trial with Carson and me. No. I'll come and watch, but I'm not doing it. There's nothing to be gained from trialing at a club trial. Both my dogs are only going to be entered in championships from now on because, there's nothing to be gained from just a club trial. So, I really wanted to put Chico in the USCA nationals. I really feel like I could get what went wrong at Canadian nationals fixed, and I feel like I could do really well at American nationals. So I messaged them, but they said Canadian regionals and a Canadian national result don't count. I'd have to go and do an American regional, and quite frankly, there's no time, nor do I want to go to the U.S. for more than one trial. So I don't know. I'm waiting to see if there's something that comes up, some championship or something that I can enter Chico in. I'd love to be able to enter him in one before the end of the year, but it's not looking very likely right now. Laszlo says, any Canadian working German Shepherd breeders you recommend? Yeah, I recommend me. Let's see what we got here. Jason says, speaking of books, do any of the books you have do with sport dogs? Is it a good read for sport or majority for pets? The book No Nonsense Dog Training is for pet. It's not a sport dog training book. Is it okay to stop? I don't know if you're asking me if you can use those specific words to get your 10-week-old puppy from biting you. Your words don't matter. What you do following the words matter. You can say no, stop, please, whatever words you want to come up with. At the end of the day, dogs don't speak English. So you can use whatever words you want. It's really what you do that matters, right? What do those words mean? And if those words don't mean anything, it doesn't matter what you say, right? Shana McDonald, dog trainer, says, you gave me helpful suggestions on my 50% coyote. I have an 80% pup that bit me in the face a couple of times. I'll be posting in the group soon for help. Shana, you need to put these dogs in a zoo, man. That's not a dog. I don't know why you're messing with these feral things. Get yourself a dog. You'll be a lot happier. 50%, 80%. Now you're dealing with a wild animal. Gregory says, someone online said that Bond, he's referring to Ann Lee's dog, who was the vice champion and the champion last year, had some poor transition phases. They said the outs were too fast. Well, Gregory, number one, whenever someone criticizes another person's dog, you have to kind of have an understanding of where they're coming from. So the individual that posted that has a vested interest, shall we say. He sold his competition dog for a ton of money to one of the competitors, who isn't a dog trainer. He just kind of bought the dog off of this individual who is a dog trainer, and also a judge. And he posted this video like as if he was trying to like educate people on transition phases. And it was just kind of an underhanded shot at Bond, in my opinion. And if he wants to say that that's not what it was, then I'm sure he can go ahead and say that. But a lot of people perceived it as an underhanded shot at Bond because Bond got a higher protection score and also a higher placement in the trial than the dog he sold to this individual. And I'm sure, look, when you're selling a dog for as much money as that dog was sold for, and that dog, by the way, placed, I think, 7th at the FCI Worlds, the dog that he sold, I'm sure he would say, well, the dog's going to win the Canadian Nationals, no problem. And in fact, the dog did not win the Canadian Nationals. So now we have to look at the other competitors and come up with reasons, oh, this was wrong, that's wrong, and that's why, my dog got screwed. And that's basically the implication, in my opinion. That's how I perceived it, right? It was kind of underhanded that he used Bond. Now, Horst actually took points from Bond for the transition phases because Ann Lee intentionally outed the dog fast. And that was a strategic thing that he did. I'm not going to say why he did it. If he ever wants to say why he did it, he can say why he did it. It's not because he's covering a genetic fault. I'll say that. It's because he's making a strategic play, and he knows that he had the points to be able to do that, right? And fundamentally, he lost points for it. So, you know, yes, could he have shown longer transitions? For sure he could. And I'm sure he's going to do so when he gets to the WSV. The person who posted that video, though, didn't show his dog in the guarding phase, right? He didn't show his dog with the fantastic transitions in the guarding phase, right? Because those two dogs did not look the same when they came into the blind. I'll say that much, right? So at the end of the day, look, whenever people post videos using examples of other dogs, you always have to say, why are you doing this? What's in this for you? What's your vested interest here, right? And then oftentimes you'll find that there's a conflict of interest, there's a personal disagreement, so on and so forth, right? So, also they didn't post all the outs too. Uh, Tommy says, thoughts on using negative reinforcement via the e-collar to create frustration into drive for the desired behavior. Yeah, I do it all the time. You got to know what you're doing, though, or you'll screw it up. Chris, I would say the problem you're having with your dog with people, I mean, it sounds like you need to take my reactive dog course. Check that out, shieldcanineonline.com. By the way, for those of you that don't know, I have a new course called the Active Power Seminar. And this is where you'll see me at my last seminar working with 7 different people in obedience and protection. And, everything from low drive dogs to, dogs that are a little bit out of control to, very green handlers, showing them how to bring more power and control into their obedience so that they can have an active, powerful dog in obedience, and then also making more control in their protection, teaching their dog to conserve energy so the dog can train and go for longer, teaching the handler how to transition all that arousal and channel all that arousal properly into the obedience, into the protection, and all sorts of other little stuff like that. So the Active Power Seminar, those of you that have my Sport Dog bundle online, it's included for free. Those of you that have Elite Gold membership, obviously it's included for free. Those of you that don't, check it out. And I have a 30% off sale on all my online courses right now for the Labor Day weekend, so check that out. Enough commercials. Let's read more comments. I bought a German Shepherd and found out over time that some have crazy drive. Chico is identical to mine, but Chico's way better trained. We'll be looking into some of your training. Awesome, Jim. Shayna, I think when you have a wild animal, you have to throw out a lot of what you're saying, like a lot of what you know about dogs, right? Their triggers are different, their thresholds are different, their natural instincts are different. You're dealing with something that's been domesticated for thousands of years. When you've got like an 80% wolf or an 80% coyote, like, this is a wild animal, right? For all intents and purposes, it's a wild animal. Those instincts are very strong. Those instincts are prepotent. Even a 50-50 cross, right? I would say you're going to get way more of the wild animal in a 50-50 cross than the domestic animal, right? Because those instincts have been bred for so many generations, and they're so prepotent because those instincts are survival based, right? They're survival mechanisms in the animal. So a lot of what you're messing with, for me, I don't even think there's a point. Like, why? Put the animal in a zoo where it belongs. Like, it's this myth that you're gonna like live in peace and harmony with a coyote or a wolf is, for most people, it is that, right? The behaviors that keep those animals alive and allow them to be successful in the wild do not predispose them to living a good life as a pet or a companion animal. They're literally counterproductive instincts, right? Hey, Mark, how's it going? Sorry, guys. I am skipping some stuff. I'm just trying to get to the big stuff here. Fusk Hawk says, for a dog you just described that you love, would you build cap, or build, then cap? It would depend on the presentation. I often kind of layer everything in slowly and together. A lot of people just build drive and build arousal, and they don't cap until too late, and then they create a lot of conflict, right? For me, usually when people say cap, it's a fancy way of saying controlling the arousal or directing the arousal into productive ways. I do it steadily, right? Where I don't just build and then try to control everything. I build and guide, build and guide. I don't like the word cap, right? Cap sounds like you're just putting a lid on it. I don't put a lid on it. I guide the behavior, right? I make the arousal and I guide it into productive directions, right? That's the focus of my training. But I do it constantly, like right from puppy on. Super Canine says, have any Nepo-Po trainers or trainers that use low stim conditioning or so-called activation through e-collar stimulation actually achieved world-class achievements? Yes. There are literally numerous people that have been on the podium. Yeah. Bart Bellon is famous for a reason. Yeah, there are many dogs that are sensitive to the handler that can handle decoy pressure. It doesn't mean that's the kind of dog I want to work. I don't like dogs that are particularly sensitive to the handler. It's not my cup of tea. Some people, it is their cup of tea. I don't personally like those dogs. Not as in I personally dislike them. I don't personally like to train those dogs in dog sport. For me, when I'm training dog sport, this is something that takes years to do. I must love the dog. I must love him. I must love his qualities. Otherwise, I'm not going to spend years training him. For what? Yeah, Demon gets it. He's like, yeah, the best 95 tracking ever seen. Right. By the way, he really made that tracking like he was. Those of you that know what I'm talking about, he was talking about how the tracking was so difficult. Bro, I ran two tracks that day, okay? Because I had two dogs in that. The tracking was not difficult. If anything, it was too easy, which is why I had some speed issues. It was not at all difficult tracking. Yes, it was raining. Yes, it was windy, but the grass was long and you could see the track the entire way. So, yeah. And again, best tracking ever seen, but Bond got, what is it, 97 tracking? So, you know, there we go, right? There's nothing where it's like, look, it's like, you know, if your dog gets, decent points, right? What are you complaining about? Even if he doesn't, like, what am I going to do? I'm going to pull up video of dogs that got higher points in tracking than my dogs and try to nitpick and say, oh, I should have got 3 more points here, and that dog shouldn't have got all the points it got. That's low class, man. That's like that's being petty. That's being a loser. At the end of the day, look, you didn't get the result you wanted. Suck it up and move on. That's life, man. Like sometimes I've actually been robbed. I've actually been robbed by judges. At the end of the day, look, move forward. Especially if you still had a reasonable outcome. Move forward. Don't be a bitch. Where does someone learn all this from? Well, you learn this from 10 years, not 10 years. You learn this from many years of training in the sport, from training multiple dogs, from building dogs from the ground up, from failing, from getting good mentorship, good coaching, trialing your dog, recalibrating, trialing again, recalibrating, so on and so forth. This is how you learn. It's not something that happens immediately. Omer says, "Hey man, hope all is well. All is well, Omer. I hope the same is for you." Pedro says, "Hi from Australia. Just got your hands on your book. Looking forward to reading it." We adopted a Chihuahua Min Pin mix. He's amazing with the family, but is crazy protective of the wife and kids. Will not let anyone near them. He's resource guarding them. He's not actually protective of them. Remember, we talked about social aggression. Humans can be a resource. Affection can be a resource. Space can be a resource. Food, toys can be a resource. There are dogs that are predisposed towards guarding one or all of those things. And that's resource guarding behavior, and certainly should be controlled and discouraged unless you enjoy being treated like a resource. Drew says, for elite, I assume you're talking about gold membership, do we got to renew annually? So for all gold members, we are going to be offering, yes, the courses are not like eternal, but we are going to be, I believe, offering something renewal wise that's going to be such a, like, it's going to be so reasonable you're not going to be able to say no. We'll put it to you that way. Marcus says, wait, there's a book. Yes, there is a book. It's called No Nonsense Dog Training. But it's not for sport. It's just like everyday functional obedience, behavior modification, stuff like that. How important are PEDs for working dogs, and do you keep PEDs? Are you talking about performance enhancing drugs? I do not use performance enhancing drugs on my dogs. I know some people that have used testosterone. They've used I don't know what it was exactly that they were using. I know some people that did do that and would give their dog, get their dog on a cycle before trial, but that was like years and years and years ago. I don't know if anyone still does that. I wouldn't be surprised though. Jim says, what age would you consider trying to lower drive in simple fetch games to avoid injury? Um, I don't think you need to lower the drive. I think you just need to control the dog better. So, yeah, there's really no like beginning age for that. At the end of the day, if the dog's being reckless and the dog's hurting you in the game, or hurting themselves, then you've definitely got to make some changes. The Gift of Nature says, this was my first official week with private training at your facility with Hef. We're already seeing improvements. Just want to say thank you for what you guys do. 5 more weeks to go. Well, welcome to the club. Welcome to the family. And I look forward to seeing you in the future. Onyx Von Indico, your old dog Onyx got 100 in tracking. I think your first and only 100 in tracking. Did he track well before you got him? He had a good tracking foundation, so I can't take full credit, unfortunately. And he was a good tracking dog. I've made some changes on his son, though. I'm hoping to get a 95 at the world level with his son, so we'll see. Mark, if you're a visual learner, I have a full suite of online courses. All right, guys, it's getting to be a little bit late, and I'm just about out of cigar here. So, if anybody has anything they want to throw in here at the end, I'm about to wish you all a happy weekend and happy training. Cassandra says, I look forward to taking your dog trainer course once I get the $4,000. Well, I look forward to having you. Super Canine Dog Training says, "What's your best advice for marketing a dog training business?" Has be good at dog training. That's the best marketing. Um, Other than that, you got to get in my trainer's course. When do we get a Montreal training center? Well, we have an Ottawa training center. I think that's pretty close to Montreal. Thanks, guys. I'm looking forward to the Worlds. Really, really excited. It's kind of like a little bit of redemption. You know, things didn't go well or the way I wanted them to go. Now I get to try again. It's always nice to be able to try again quickly, and not have to stew on things for a month, for months on end. Um, but yeah, I'm really gonna try and go out there and do my dog proud, and do everybody here proud, at the World Championship. We definitely don't want to go there just to go there. We want to go there and definitely have an impact. So that's the goal. 3 strong phases, consistency, and of course, most importantly, having a good time with the dog. But at the end of the day, remember, there's probably a lot more losing in dog sport than there is winning. And those losses are going to define your success or failure moving forward. So, um, yeah. Super Canine Dog Training says, if you're already good at dog training. If you're already good at dog training, then there's this wonderful thing called a phone or a camera that you can begin to film your success in dog training with, and utilize that to begin to market. You know, it's a lot of people get like, of course, there's like marketing strategies and stuff, and I go over a lot of it in my online trainer's course. So I'm not going to obviously put any of that content out here for free. But at the end of the day, if you're excellent at what you do, that's the most important thing. There are very few people I know that are excellent at something that don't have success in that thing. If you're an excellent dog trainer, you're going to have a good dog training business. All right, guys. Nice talking to all of you. You guys have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on the next one.